So Swaziland was obviously under the the Boers back then. It got independence in 1968. And when it got independence in 1968, that then changed by the king, who then was King Mswati III. And how he changed it was that he was able to put in a decree that says that, everything now. It's well and good for South Africans to say, perhaps this democracy has not worked for us.
Yes.
I mean, I think that is, it's not working for us, but they are in a democracy. They are able to express themselves. Unions are not even allowed. They are there, and they are there, but they are there under very difficult conditions, where they are persecuted. We just had one president of the teachers union, SNUT, who for a very long time was being persecuted by labor, like your general
yes.
Workers, and so someone here who's a cleaner probably earns 3.5 plus.
Yeah.
In Swaziland, you can easily earn 1,200 rand on a monthly basis.
Working for government or working for a group?
And also things like social security are not there. So you see here at COVID, this was in addition to the social security that you receive. You received the 350 rand. There's nothing like that in Swaziland. And where employment, and then if you look at how South Africa responds, to some of the atrocities that are happening in other countries, obviously Palestine being one very relevant one because it's still ongoing, and how they've responded just on the principle of human rights. You are seen as a problem, and they are going to come for you. They do, and in practical terms they do. We have a lot of young people that are in prison right now because of similar, circumstances. He's above. He shouldn't. He's placed there. The reason why he was placed there is to ensure that he takes care of his people. Mm-hmm. He wasn't placed there to exploit his people, which is what he's doing right now. And therefore, he should not be above his people. Yes, his people might...
Mashani, politically incorrect. Today we are talking politics of another country. We're going to talk about Swaziland. Gitweri, a heroine, someone who's brave to do this than most of us are. Comrade, how are you?
I'm good, my comrade. How are you?
I'm okay. Please just tell the audience who are you and where you're from, so we can unpack your politics.
Yes, my name is Qhawekazi Khumalo. I'm from an organization called Swazi Lives Matter, which is a global solidarity movement on the issue of Swaziland, the question of Swaziland. So in short, that's where I am. Okay,
we met at the Tabombeki. What is it? What are those talks?
I think it's a Tabombeki annual talk. Yeah.
Were you happy with the question? You posed, how he answered it?
Look, diplomacy is always the issue around, political issues, particularly when you do have a country like Swaziland and what's happening in Swaziland. So I did expect the diplomacy. I think that, I'm not sure if I was necessarily happy, but I accepted the answer. I think he gave a good answer, as you would expect, under those conditions. I don't think that he was expecting, a question around Swaziland as well. So, we accept it. The question is what happens, from here on. And maybe I'm a little bit unhappy about, what has happened or what seems to be happening or what is not happening in regards to how he has responded. Obviously, some of us are not privy, to the conversations behind closed doors, those in authority. So we wait and see, but we are trying to agitate the Thabo Mbeki Foundation to have a conversation around the issue of Swaziland. But we hope it will be a little bit more responsive than it has been.
Thank you. So, what is Swaziland? Just explain to us what is the country of Swaziland. What should we even call it? Eswatini? Please just explain. Maybe the understanding what kind of a country it is and how did it become. If you want to give us a history, it's also fine. Before we unpack what is happening, for a South African who has no idea what the Swaziland is, maybe you can even use examples in South Africa which say you guys have a president, after 5 years you want another one, they go to election, they campaign, then what happens in Swaziland? Just do it for us so we understand.
Right. So Swaziland is a small country that is bordered obviously by South Africa, and also Mozambique on the high end. It's a small country of beautiful people. I think Swaziland is very similar to South Africa in terms of the language is a little bit different, but it's Nguni language. But also there's a lot of interaction between South Africa and Swaziland. So in terms of, I think, the politics of Swaziland, so Swaziland was obviously under the the Boers back then. It got independence in 1968. And when it got independence in 1968, that then changed by the king, or then was King Mswati III. And how he changed it was that he was able to put in a decree that says that everything now is going to be handled by the powers of the royal family. So that's the 1973 decree, and in that decree you now find a country that does not, for instance, allow multi-party democracy. So political parties are banned in Swaziland. So the system in itself, in terms of governance, is a system that's called Tinkundla. And the Tinkundla system is really a traditional system that obviously has the interest of the royal family. So it's the Tinkundla system where you'd, for instance, have here municipalities. Here you'd have, communities, bandlana, where some of the service deliveries are undertaken by these, community-based governing structures within the Tinkundla system. And you have a situation where you don't have the multi-party democracy, so there's more of a selection of those that then represent the king in the different structures, so up until parliament. And when you get to parliament, obviously the king again, that's why he's an absolute monarch, so he has absolute power, meaning that even parliament's decisions he can override. And currently the king you can't take the king to court, for instance. He's above the law. So yeah, I think that's the political situation of Swaziland right now. Like I said, I think that there's a lot with regards to the history of Swaziland, and also the history, of South Africa's political activism, between the two countries. I think, organizations like Bopudemo, which is a political organization from Swaziland, were formed on the basis that once the apartheid regime, so they obviously were working with the freedom fighters in South Africa. Once that apartheid regime has been won in terms of bringing in democracy in South Africa, the next step would then be to obviously also challenge the status quo in Swaziland in terms of this absolute monarch regime that we're currently sitting with.
Thanks. Look, man, lots of questions from what you just said. See, I love Swaziland. Most South Africans love Swaziland. And I think you'd agree with me. South Africans and Mswati crossing the border coming this way, it just feels like you just went to another province. I mean, the only difference would be maybe when you buy with your rent, the change becomes Amalangeni.
Yeah.
But the whole entire system becomes I mean, you change nothing going to Swaziland. I think that's the beauty, how close the people of Swaziland are. And I always put Swaziland, Lesotho, and Botswana into one cup to say, I mean, if we were to unite Africa, this would be the first step for us to unite Africa. But let's talk about the Tikundla. So Tikundla, you likened it to maybe, can I say local governments?
Yeah, you can.
The councillors would be in Dunas?
Yes.
Okay.
So
yeah. And you said
And
1973 decree. It's when the whites left.
Yes.
And Africans started ruling themselves under King Sobhuza.
Yeah, so 1973, there was a period in 1968 where the whites left and Swaziland became independent.
Okay.
And upon that independence, there was democracy. For instance, there was a political party. But then 5 years later, the king then changed it with the decree to say there will no longer be political party participation in the country. He's going to rule by absolute monarch. Okay. So there was that transition between the whites left and Swaziland got its independence. And then 5 years, another transition into the current system. Yeah.
The reason I'm interested in that is in South Africa, like I said, we're going to just oppose what's happening in SD and what's happening in South Africa. Is in South Africa, people yearn for a monarchy, for a traditional leader. And I say that because of the number of people who are voting for MK. They say they want a ruler. Jacob Zuma said he doesn't like democracy. In fact, he wants to go back to traditional ruling. And to an extent, he said this Roman Dutch law, they will do away with it. And if you read the constitution of MK, that's exactly the power that he has vested in him as a ruler of MK. It's almost the same power that you have in Swaziland. And I want to juxtapose the two when I'm thinking at the back of my mind. Do South Africans know what they want in MK? Or because people of Swaziland have tasted it, they no longer want it? Or you guys represent a very small minority of people who want democracy? And are you sure you want democracy? I don't know where you're going to start as adding this, but
it's a packed one.
It's a packed one. Yeah.
It's a packed one. I mean, I think it's very interesting. A very interesting dynamic in the sense that I think it's well and good for South Africans to say perhaps this democracy has not worked for us.
Yes.
I mean, I think that is, or it's not working for us, but they are in a democracy. They are able to express themselves. They are able to associate themselves with whatever religion, whatever political party. Those are things that are inherent, in the current system here in South Africa. When you then jump over into Swaziland, none of that is inherent in Swaziland. For instance, there's this terrorism act that the government uses, to weaponize it against freedom of expression, for instance. And so I think it's important that we allow Mswati to decide what it is that they want. And at this particular point, the system of governance in Swaziland has not worked. It's 50 plus years now, since 1973. You see the underdevelopment in Swaziland. You see the poverty levels in Swaziland. Unemployment is at 58%. So we can say with absolute confidence that system has failed. That system is currently collapsing, and therefore it is very important to listen what the Swazis are saying in terms of change, in terms of allow us to experience for ourselves a multi-party democracy system in order for us to be able to decide if it will work or not. So I think we cannot then say, perhaps because they've not tasted it, they want it. But the current conditions, are saying to them, this is what we want at this particular moment. And I suppose also just it's easier to say, in South Africa, democracy, they now want a similar system, But maybe the question really is, why has the South African democracy not worked? And maybe when you then go deeper into understanding why the system of democracy in South Africa is not working, perhaps you'll then start seeing that maybe wanting a similar system like the chiefs, having power to decide, what happens is not necessarily the answer. I think on whether or not we're the minority in wanting change in Swaziland, definitely not. We're definitely not in a minority. Majority of Mswati are actually asking for this change. The difference really is there's oppression in Swaziland. And I don't think that South Africans in particular realize the level of oppression that is there. For instance, you're not allowed to hold protests as I'm speaking to you. You can't protest in Swaziland right now. If you were to want to protest, you can't go over 10 people. So the system in itself is very oppressive. In Swaziland right now, you are not able to express anything that is against the king. You can't, express that in the manner in which he's ruling the country, is not benefiting Mswati. You're not allowed to say things like that. So there's a lot of oppression in Swaziland. Unions are not even allowed. They are there, and they are there, but they are there under very difficult conditions, where they are persecuted. We just had one president of the teachers' union, SNAT, who for a very long time was being persecuted by, the government, and he was suspended from work, because of his, very strong union. He's the president of a union. So there's a lot of oppression on things that you take for granted here, that you are able to say, no, Ramaphosa, you can't be doing this, or you need to pull up your socks. And in Swaziland, you don't.
So, I want to ask you a lot of questions at the same time, and so I don't want it to be a hard debate. I want us to talk, a conversation, so when people it mustn't be too heavy. When you say I'm not allowed to protest, and you spoke about the unions, but I was just thinking of the question. Let's say you're not protesting against government, but you're protesting, maybe there's MTN there, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say you are protesting against MTN. Mm-hmm. Unions, how good are they? How are they a representation of the people against against the king if they protest against a private company?
I mean, you see, the situation we have in Swaziland is that a lot of direct investment, Swati has, shares in it. So he's, if you are then, let's say, protesting against a particular company, that is going to be a problem because now you are challenging the king indirectly. So that's the situation. So I think unions in Swaziland are strong under the circumstances. Remember, it's very difficult for you to discharge of your duty as a unionist if the system in itself is not allowing it. If the system in itself, for instance, if you are at a particular company and you are asking workers to join the union and those workers become represented, those workers will be intimidated. And if you are a leader of a union, you will also be intimidated. You're going to face persecution. So they are unable to maneuver in the manner in which unions naturally should, because of the conditions, obviously, the system places on allowing a freedom of expression, and also in terms of labor, the representation, ensuring that good practices are practiced in terms of labor in itself. You'll be shocked if I would tell you that a majority of Mswati earn an average of 1,800 rand a month.
Wait, like an average?
Like as in the majority in terms of, labor, like, your general workers. And so someone here who's a cleaner probably earns 3.5 plus.
Yeah.
In Swaziland, you can easily earn 1,200 rand on a monthly basis.
Working for government or working for a good company?
Even good companies, it's general labor practice. It's gazetted. So the employment, like the rates are gazetted. So government has gazetted such ridiculous salary and rates for our people. So those are some of the issues that culminate into why we are saying the system is not working.
Is it because cost of living is low, or you want to suggest sinister move by the government, meaning that they swindle the poor to increase high margins for
the companies?
And the investors?
That's what it is, because the cost of living is the same everywhere.
Yes.
So you can literally make equal. So you can make that direct comparison to say, what are you able to do with 1,800 rand here in South Africa in this day and time? And what is that person able to do with 1,800 rand in Swaziland, having worked same hours as someone here? So yeah, I think this, like I'm saying, there's just a lot of real practical, challenges that the people of Swaziland are facing. That these are direct challenges, So we're not talking about things that it's non-essential, or it would be nice to have. Earning 1,800 rand is just ridiculous.
Can it be? Because I want to compare South Africa and Swaziland, because like I told you, we envisaged a country where we do not have a ruler who's elected. We have a king who loves us as South Africans. And I keep telling you that, please pardon my ignorance. And to Mswati also, pardon my ignorance, because I do not know how you live. And I'm not trying to rubbish or maybe trivialize the way you live. We think it's a good thing to have a king who loves us, to an extent that we even think in South Africa, all cultures have it, where before the harvest, a king has to do. And culturally and traditionally, we understand at the back of my mind, it was designed so that there can never be anyone who's richer than the king, because then the king will have to collect everyone's share in profits just so it is centralized. It's a form of tax before taxation was even there. So we think it's all noble and well, but you are indicating that all those companies who are working in Swaziland, whether foreign or local, they also pay allegiance to the king.
Yeah.
And at rates, at how many rates are we talking about here?
I mean, I don't think it's as formalized as in terms of how many rates.
Yeah.
We know, for instance, I indicated that when he has a birthday, he would say it's his birthday, and would call for companies and people to pour into his bank account so that he's able to celebrate his birthday. And so I mean that's a known thing in Swaziland, but obviously structurally also is a little bit of a problem, because you see it also then happens at a community level. For instance, if you are a student and you need to go and get a permit, you must go to Induna, Mpagatini, they'll give you a stamp, into a particular form that you must now then take to the government offices. And so what then happens is that the chiefs now will then be demanding, that you must give them something, you must pay allegiance to them for you to be able to receive that service. Now, this is supposed to be a government service that is supposed to be free, but so you now have a situation where it cascades down into the community, the tradition of paying allegiance to the king. But I think, again, for me, there's a lot of abuse in the name of tradition. There's a lot of oppression in the name of tradition. I mean, there's certain things that, you're not allowed to say, about the king, about how the king is ruling the country. You are expected to traditionally bow your head, even though the person you're bowing your head to is the direct reason why you are not living to your potential, is a direct reason why you are as impoverished as you are. I'm sure you know that HIV is very high in Swaziland. Right now there's no medication in hospitals, and this is just the reality of it. You can go on Facebook, you can go anywhere and see just the last couple of weeks the situation about no medication in Swaziland and how many people actually are not receiving the healthcare that they should. And the money is there. That's the difference. Swaziland is a very small country, about 1.2 million people. The money is there, but the money is because of tradition, we'll say.
So
is directed to the king now. The king must, take everything and have everything at the detriment of the people because of tradition. Is this what we are saying?
Okay, and this is very difficult to compare, because I grew up in apartheid and now into democracy. I will keep apologizing for my ignorance. So if I'm a butcher and he will get a cut from what I do, and then do you think the country is struggling, but you just answered it by saying the money is there?
Yeah.
Do you think so he's deliberately not channeling funds, whether to punish or to keep people poor, or what is it? Because you surely can't claim that he hates his people.
I can definitely claim that he hates his people.
Why would he hate the people who are his source of income and pride?
You know what modern day slavery is? Like, just think about slavery.
Yeah.
You know how it was in slavery, where you worked day and night but received very little.
Yeah.
So can we then say that deliberate act by the masters at the time? Can we question it and say that the masters at some point loved the slaves? No, we can't. what's happening in Swaziland is exactly that. Mswati has exploited Mswati for a very, very long time. He does not care about the people because he's not only not channeling funds, but those funds are from the taxes and the minerals on the country, where they are supposed to go back to the people, but he takes it for himself. He takes it for himself. So I can definitely say that he definitely hates, his people. They are just subjects. They are just mere peasants to him, who must do as he wants them to do. So, I mean, like I'm saying, there's no two ways about it, because you can't love your people and yet the level of underdevelopment that they are faced with, and the social challenges that they are faced with, is as where it is. I mean, if you would just cut the amount of money, I think I don't have the actual figures, but it's like more a billion that he gets. Yeah, well, like let's say 7 billion, something like that, that he gets from the national budget. He gets 7 billion. And then whatever's left now must go to healthcare. You find what's in healthcare, you have 350 million. But why is he getting 7 billion? We would take 50% of that 7 billion, put it back into the national coffers, and ensure that it goes into developing, and also things like social security are not there. So you see here at COVID, this was in addition to the social security that you receive. You received the 350 rand. There's nothing like that in Swaziland. And where employment is as high as it is, there's a serious challenge, because then the households don't have income, and those that have income have very small income. So we cannot at any point say that he loves, or he could love, or he did love. No, he just exploited. He's exploiting the people of Swaziland. Like I'm saying, it's just modern day slavery.
I'll talk about Zuma and the Zulu kingdom later. If it's as bad as you say it is, the king meets frequently with leaders of SADC, and with South African leaders as well in political parties. You do know that during apartheid, people ran to Swaziland and Mozambique. I just want to understand this part. You think the ANC appreciates and loves this status quo because now they've been leaders of government for 30 years, and if you say this is a human right, because you're talking about human rights violation, if you say why are they quiet, they seldom speak about it.
Yeah, I mean,
you would find Julius Malema being more vocal
about it.
Can you explain? If you understand, if you don't, it's okay. You'll be lost like us.
Yeah, look, I think it's a very difficult one to answer. The ANC has particular and specific resolutions on the issue of Swaziland. I just don't know then where it gets lost in translation from,
implementing whatever. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, I haven't had the opportunity to really thoroughly, deeply understand it, because perhaps the proximity, to understand it is, I'm very far from it. So that's why I'm saying it's very difficult to answer. But it's also very concerning, because if you look at, if we say foreign policy, South Africa and solidarity, where injustices exist, particularly injustices that reflect a time in which South Africa also went through similar things. It might be a different regime. Here it was apartheid, there it's absolute monarchy, but the human rights violations are as ripe as it was here. The differences you fought between blacks and whites here. On the other hand, it's between the royal monarchy and the people. And then if you look at how South Africa responds, to some of the atrocities that are happening in other countries, obviously Palestine being one very relevant one, because it's still ongoing, and how they've responded just on the principle of human rights is very, very different to how it has responded or not responded in the situation of Swaziland. I mean, 2021, with the massacre of Mswati, we would have expected what South Africa is doing with regards to this massacre of the Palestinians, so that one is it's difficult to say.
Very difficult
it's
to
very
understand.
difficult to say, because also equally we are doing the work that requires us also to try and maybe understand the politics behind the politics, so yeah, like I'm saying, I mean, Swaziland enjoys on paper a lot of solidarity, from the ANC, but I think it's been lost in translation. And perhaps also it is the trajectory of the struggle of Swaziland in itself, and that's why I'm saying also not being very close proximity. Perhaps that's part of the reason why it's been slow in coming. It's been a little bit more silent. That the understanding of the political climate right now might be different for the ANC. I'm not sure, but I think there is an expectation from the Mswati, and as you correctly say, a lot of freedom fighters are bonded to Swaziland, because a lot of people actually did go to Swaziland. So
the work that you do, does it put you in proximity with Pudemo?
yes, it does.
And then are you a member there and doing Swazi Lives Matter on a separate, almost like ANC being a broad church where lots of activists are inside ANC, but they would
Also
go and COSATU there, and they'll go and do SACP there, but centrally they are. So you
Yes.
belong to that as well. And I just want to understand, do you have other political parties besides Podemo in Swaziland?
Yeah, there's a couple.
How many are there?
I think there's about 8 right now.
Why 8? Why 8? I was sitting here with someone talking about birthday of the king. I was sitting with a young Mandela where you were sitting. In South Africa, Ramaphosa was celebrating a birthday, and he wrote an open letter criticizing the president, and he was sitting there. So, and I'm thinking, he was saying, amongst other things, in South Africa there are only 2 white parties, and the rest, he says 50 parties are black parties. So when I come to you and I'm thinking it's just Podemo and 2 others, probably offshoots of Podemo.
Yeah.
But you say, how many? 8?
Yeah, I think
Why?
there's about 8. I mean, vibrancy of democracy, is
Ideas.
it not? Yeah, diversity in ideologies. I mean, I can't particularly say why. I think
Do they do things differently?
Yeah, I think they do things differently. I think ultimately the goal is one, but the methods might differ.
Different.
Yeah.
The reason I asked that question is, in South Africa, we knew if we go to the polls at the time, our slogans as South Africans were "one man, one vote" and "freedom now." Because to us, we were envisaging a world where one man gets one vote and freedom. We even forgot that ANC was fighting for land, and then we got that freedom, we don't have land.
Mm-hmm.
So and I know it might not be an objective answer because you are subjectively a Podemo aligned, but how big are they? And if you were to go to the polls tomorrow, which party will emerge?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
Yeah.
So
no.
with the ANC, we
were very clear.
It was very clear
Yeah,
that
you were very
we had
clear.
other political parties,
Yeah.
but this one is the one with like I said, is a broad church.
Yeah.
So in Swaziland, if you were to tell someone which one is the biggest political party,
I mean, I wouldn't be able to say which one is the
Yeah.
biggest, but remember, political parties are not allowed to
campaign
to
hold-
do nothing.
Yes.
So it would be very difficult
Yeah.
to say, okay, this is, I know Pudemo, for instance, is an old party in Swaziland. There's also other older parties as well. We've got your NNLCs, which is the Ngwane National Liberation Congress. Also, we've got a party called SWADEPA, the Swazi Democratic Party. So you do have older parties as well, over the period of since the 1973 decree. But then also you have a lot of new parties. There's a new party, Swalimo. It's about 3 years. So also remember that there was a moment in 2021 in the struggle after the unrest, during the unrest. So a lot of people got conscientized with regards to political situation in the country. So I think that as part of, the growth, and the expanding of the awakening, in terms of politically, you had new parties, like I'm saying, that have come up since 2021, for instance, and they are also part of the landscape now when you talk about political parties. So again, with the difficulty of being burned, you're not able to really make an assessment on the ground and the people. And remember also the people don't necessarily want to be known that they belong to political parties or a particular party, because they are being persecuted. It's very easy for the state police, if you are very vocal. And if you are raising issues with regards to the governance, the royal family, you are seen as a problem, and they are going to come for you. They do. And in practical terms, they do. We have a lot of young people that are in prison right now because of similar, circumstances. So yeah, now that one, I think it's a game of seeing how everything unfolds, I think, in terms of what Mswati's democracy, how will they configure their democracy, and the different ideas currently. But I do think that for me, the more diverse, I think the greater the fruits that will come, as it won't be just one particular fruit. It's just perhaps maybe difficult to engage currently politically, I suppose, because of the differences in the methods, or
So another question coming from an ignorant place. So about 8-9 political parties in Swaziland. There's never been an election in Swaziland.
There is elections in Swaziland.
What kind of elections are they?
The elections are not. They don't include the political parties. They don't include the political parties. So it's the kind of elections that are not transparent. For instance, they're not.
But
fair.
what are people voting for?
People
for
are
local
voting.
Yeah,
so they vote for the local structures. So you have Wobandla Ncane, you'll have Tinduna, and in the local structure. So that's what they vote for, and then
So you don't get national and provincial elections.
No.
So you do have a cabinet, right?
Yeah, there is.
And
members of parliament.
Yeah. How is that structured?
So how that's structured, after the structural elections, then there's a phase in which now there must be members of parliament that are being elected from that structural election.
Yeah.
So then.
So the vote that you would have collected they give you credence to go to
then you
parliament
are able to
and executive.
be able to compete maybe with another person as well for member of parliament. Yeah.
But then you do understand why there are a lot of political parties.
Mm-mm.
Because you have votes. Because people want power. That's why you have a lot of political parties.
I don't think so.
I tell you, because look in South Africa.
Yeah.
I just did a podcast proving to people that black politicians do not want unity. I'm talking about in South Africa. They do not want it. They claim, they tell us they want it. Musimaman and Hemen, they were disgruntled DA, but they didn't want to go together and go and everyone. They opened their own parties. People who left the DA, they opened their little parties. People left ANC, they go and open their little parties. It's because they are smaller than votes. People say, in my constituency, people can vote for me. That's why they don't. Why would they want to go and strike with Podemo? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I'm following what you're saying.
So democracy that you guys want is a mirage. We live in a democracy and we are not happy. A lot of South Africans will tell you how unhappy they are with democracy.
But at least you can express that you're unhappy.
That's why I'm telling you that we wanted the one man, one vote, and we wanted to say Ramaphosa is a big nose. And that's it. And then, remember in South Africa, it's so, I remember when people used to draw Msholozi. There was a Khumalo guy who was an artist, and I could be wrong because he may not be a Khumalo. He drew Msholozi and even drew his privates.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, I would sit there and think, it can't be right. No, man, we are African people. No matter how much you hate someone, you want to tell me Steve Biko died for this? That an artist, instead of drawing love, he draws someone's private part and then he says it's artistic expression. So you can imagine if that thing happens in a place where it's not democracy and that person is persecuted. I'm going to be sitting and thinking, oh, now you are pais. You can't disrespect someone's
on the basis
someone's parent like that. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And then we call it artistic expression. So democracy, this democracy that we want as Africans, in South Africa, it's a lesson we have learned that it's not good. And I'm saying, and like I say, I keep apologizing for Mswati because they might think I'm being insensitive. We are living in a democracy and we are not happy with it. If what you want is a model of South African politics, nitokhala.
Stokhala. I think sifuna kufika lapho sitibonela khona ukuthi I know sesiyakhala ke manje because last khona manje like where we are right
it's
now
not nice.
Nice is putting it lightly. Nice is really putting it lightly. I mean where we are right